Good morning, and thanks for joining us on Behind the Gavel today with Jason. I've got a really special guest today, and let me go ahead and just jump out and bring Duane on. Duane Scott, I hit the wrong button there. Duane Scott Cerny. I've known of him for quite a while. He is co-owner of Broadway Antique Market in Chicago, which I visited many years ago. And it's a stalwart in Chicago. If you're ever in the area, it's a great place to check out. But I came across his name when I came across this book, Selling Dead People's Things, here last year. Great cover photo, by the way, that Duane wrote about his adventures and excitement and just everything involved with what his business has been, going back to early on when he was talking to his neighbors about their tchotchkes as his first story. So real quick, for those who don't know Duane, but again, Duane, thanks for joining me today.
Oh, good morning. Thank you.
Duane graduated college from Northeastern Illinois University. I talked about he's author and a co-owner of the Broadway Antique Market. He's also a musician, founded an indie music label, which is interesting, and has a plethora of awards and recognitions through the industry over the years. His Broadway Antique Market has sold over $40 million worth of goods during their time open, and they've provided props for over 500 TV shows, theatrical events, commercials, and related, where they rent these pieces out. So I'm really excited to have you here, Duane. For those of you watching at home, we'd love it if you would let us know where you're watching from. If you have any questions, go ahead and post them below. Sue, thank you so much for watching. Duane, why don't you tell us really quickly, how did you kind of get into the business, and then what prompted you to write the book? Let's talk about the book first and get into the business end of it a little bit later.
Well, yeah, I've written a lot of things over the years. Thank you for that great intro. Song lyrics. I've had a couple plays produced, write short stories, but I've never wrote about what I do as far as being an antique dealer. And briefly, I was able to get in a really wonderful writing program in New York, and you had to write true stories right there, just pen and paper, and then read them to the class. The first time I went and wrote about what I do, to be honest, everyone went, bullshit. you can't write fiction. That's not permitted. And I went, no, I was with all these other dealers. This really happened. Because as many of you dealers and listeners, viewers know, you come into some really odd situations. You get into some houses. So it really pissed me off that that I kind of flopped. Went back to Chicago. I rewrote the story 20 times because I'm the one who failed. You didn't believe me. And on a fluke, I submitted it to the New York Times, which I've never submitted anything to them. They're not going to print it. They did. And that's the opening chapter to the book. And then I realized, for as much as we all love roadshow, antique roadshow, but what people really get off on is, what's the backstory? How did you come across this? What is this? Yeah, you bought it for a quarter at a yard sale. That's okay, fine. That's not too interesting. But generally, though, there's some really incredible stories behind the objects, and I realized there isn't a book like this. I researched, and there was a book in the 50s or 60s on an English antique dealer who wrote basically a memoir about what he did. And I realized that 99% of all the books that are out there are about identifying what an item is and value. And that's not this book. This is about people and objects and history and life. It turned out into a much bigger thing than I realized, but it was a vehicle for me to tell other people's stories.
Yeah, and you're right. There's not a whole lot of books out there. The Kino brothers did a book years kind of back that talked a little bit about the exploration and finding things in unexpected places, but not to the degree that you go into the backstory, which I think was really fascinating. Everything from your background, which was selling Playboy pictures that your dad brought home that your mom made him throw away,
right?
Which reminded me, as a kid, I used to have a big duffel bag full of candy that I would buy the big bag and now and laters and sell them out piece by piece. Same kind of thing, the same kind of hustle. And I was just looking back through the book, the Playboy kind of has played a role in your career, your life. Talk a little bit about that. Obviously the fascination and And real quick, before we get any further, your book was recognized as a top 20 memoir by The Advocate, a leading LGBTQ publication. So obviously you're a gay man. Playboy doesn't have the same meaning to you as it would to a straight man back in your childhood. But from that, it's really kind of defined a large portion of, or at least a portion of your career. Tell a little bit about the Playboy story, and then how that's what you've done with that since.
So my dad actually was a photo engraver, so he worked on the production end of Playboy. And I always said it's too bad it wasn't like the editorial end where all these great writers their work was being done. Well, that's not what happened to me. But I think as a gay man, if you can learn early on how to merchandise and market Playboy, you're doing pretty good. So
Right.
It's learning to sell something that you just don't really have any interest in, but acknowledge that, oh yeah, well, there's other people are interested in this. So it was kind of a good way to kind of just to get my bearings on that. That being said, though, you really can't separate Chicago from Hugh Hefner.
Right.
It's kind of what would later happen and would happen to me with Oprah. I was used to laugh. Every third person is like worked for Oprah or signed some kind of waiver that they couldn't talk about Oprah. God love her, but it's become a part of the fabric of the town. And what's great about Playboy is they just hired so many independent artists and graphic artists. So I've been to countless estate sales on the north side. And again, it turns out here's another illustrator for Playboy. Here's another, their estate. And these really talented people. I was friends with High Roth. I write about him quite extensively in the book. He used to call him the most famous unknown person in Chicago.
Right.
And I've been determined to correct that. Because he and his wife were fascinating. But there were so many, I would say, little people, but the people behind the scenes who made that happen. Fun story on that one. When Hefner started out, he had no money, and so he would offer to pay people in stock. And Hefner was like, or High Roth brother was like, I'm not taking stock in this thing. Who knows what's going to happen with that? I got a mortgage to pay. I got a kid on the way. So there you go.
There you go. Real quick, I want to jump in. Winfred Ward, I will send us a private message about your Lalique pieces. Obviously, we saw a lot of Lalique. Now that we got the commercial out of the way, you mentioned High Roth, and I was just rereading that story in your book here. It's page 96. Dime museums, spitting nickels, and penny slots. And this story is one of my favorite stories. Not only because the High is part of it, which the stories about High in here are epic, but the what you guys do, where you go, and when you find out afterwards, the big score that it really ended up being.
Yeah.
Talk to us a little bit about that. I won't preface it any other way.
Thank you. A number of the stories kind of have an O. Henry quality to them, so I've been told. So there's often a surprise or a twist.
Yeah.
Which just makes it more engaging. And then that's what happened. So it's, again, not fiction. High would often take me on these crazy little outings, and he'd just say, show up at my house at 6 in the morning, and we're going to go to Indiana. And I had no idea where we're going. And it was this a little, actually, it wasn't little, it was fairly large. It was a hardware store in Tipton, Indiana. And then this older gentleman had this place. He was retiring, selling everything off. And in the basement, he had created a Wild West town. So when people are there shopping, their kids could go down and play, which was just the best thing ever. I lost my mind with that. But within that, he also had a sideshow that he had bought out that was originally from Albuquerque, New Mexico, the exhibits. And that's right up my alley. So that's why we went out there, and darn if it isn't there. And that guy was a character. And the whole thing was a bit of a show. And I was ready. It was one of those rare times, you got the cash in your pocket and somebody who actually wants to sell something.
Right.
So yeah, but that actually, it's honestly, it changed my life because From that, we bought all these sideshow animals, but that would be the first movie we would prop. Was Natural Born Killers, and the cow is in the 25th anniversary scene. The camera's on the cow's head. Who cares? But Oliver Stone had approached us about renting it. And when he called, I hung up on him because Oliver Stone. No, you're not.
Yeah.
But that opened the door, and that's why there's, again, all these years later, hundreds of films and TV shows, theatrical events. But it really all started with that and getting us into propping. So one thing leads to the next.
That's cool, and I love how that story ends up where they thought you're buying for somebody else. They thought you're buying for the Field Museum.
Yeah, don't go too far there.
Well, you published it, so it's not exactly a secret anymore.
They survive. They're fine.
They're fine. Yeah. Yeah, they're doing okay. They got that nice little building downtown.
Yeah. I think.
So there's a couple of. What's your favorite story from the book?
Oh wow. I love the Jacob Marley story, and I've wanted to write more, and I've gotten some really nice feedback about that, especially from people who knew Tom. His name was Tom Nanescus, but he had a store which ended up being right next to me. It was Jacob Marley, and he just sold the best of the best to the best.
Yeah.
So the celebrities would line up there, and he was just the most down to earth, decent guy. I wanted to write about an older antique dealer that I really respected, and I've known quite a few of them, because for all it sounds off topic, but for all the press and hoopla about restaurants and chefs and all that, which is great, but people like Tom, who had this incredible eye. He was dealing in mid-century modern before anybody in town. He produced the Latin school shows. I don't know if you're familiar with that. Again, first Midwest modern shows down on the Gold Coast, and everything was done exceptionally well. He was a florist by trade, so he just had a whole visual eye that I absolutely don't have. And to me, the things that he bought and sold touched so many people's lives. They're still in people's homes, that they see that pair of George Jensen candlesticks, or your whatever. Whereas you had a meal and it was good, and the chef somebody and whatever. But I think antique dealers, especially people like Tom, were really significant because they reached out and touched people's lives for decades of what they liked, and they changed people's environments. It's my own personal thing, but they're the unsung heroes, and there's a number of others I plan to write about.
Well, and it's interesting you compare it to restaurateurs and stuff. The big difference is, to me, being an antique dealer, there are no investors, there's no boards, there's no help. If you're an antique dealer on an antique shop, 99% of the time, it's you, your money, your family, and that's it.
Yeah.
And so to what's that?
Seat of your pants.
Absolutely. And every day it's a challenge. And the good days are great and the bad days are terrible. But I don't think any of us in the business for more than a couple of years would change anything about it.
No.
We love it so much. Sue, yeah, if you want to buy the book, anybody watching wants to buy the book, sellingdeadpeoplesthings.com has links. You can buy it right from there. Of course, a lot of independent bookstores around the country have for sale. Amazon and others have it as well. But buy from somebody other than them if you can. They make enough money, and other local dealers and things like that, suppliers can use that money much more so than those big behemoths.
It's also sold in a lot of the antique stores and malls around the country, which kind of so it's kind of been an alternative way to market the book, which I just kind of stumbled into. But you got it. If you can get past the cover, the cover makes you. I want you to look at this book.
Right, but you can't miss the cover.
You can't miss the cover. And it's a little disturbing. It's not that scary for people who get all wrapped up about that. And I do want to shout out to that. I had this incredible team of women who pulled this all together. From the cover art and the editors and the proofreaders. I have this fantastic team. I'm so blessed. So this is hardly, I did this, not at all.
So how did you decide on this cover photo? I mean, the two-headed calf would have been great. I mean, there's so many things iconic in your career, and bam.
Yeah.
Why this picture?
So I had stumbled upon that image, and believe it or not, it was on a set of dishes. So yes. So to her credit,
your mom and dad have dessert.
So Angela Rossi, who's Beat Up Creations on Etsy. Everybody should go check her out. She's a genius. And she just thinks things in a very different way. She created this image, and then it was you get on a plate or cups or whatever. Right. And there are things even more disturbing and less disturbing than that. But I licensed it from her, that's that. As soon as I saw it, I knew. But what's funny is, of course, editorially, and I have all these people, and they're pulling everything together, and they're all going, I don't know about this cover, and they kept sending me covers, and it would look like if Martha Stewart wrote a book on antiques, it'd be in a barn, and there's a trunk, and there's a frame, and it's kind of askew, and there's some cobwebs, and I'm like, there's no recipes here, so it wasn't me. It just wasn't me. It just wasn't me, and there was it just wasn't engaging. So and then I have to say too, I was just so lucky in the number of industry professionals who gave me blurbs, who took a chance on it and have their name associated with this. They'd never speak to me again. And that took a while. That took a while, and I got almost everybody. I won't mention who I didn't get, but I got almost everyone that I had wanted and respected and thought. And of course, they read the book first. But I did have an agent for a while, and that was her idea, and I thought that was a really good idea too, just to give it some validation. Going, who is this guy and what is this book about? So.
Well, speaking of that, I want to mention that Nate Burkus, who most people know as Oprah's design guru, has done many things on his own. He has his own TV show. He wrote, this book is a beautiful collection of all his years of experience and a 25-year love affair with design. Richard Wright of Wright 20 Auction House says at turns it's hilarious and poignant, which is absolutely true. Like Duane just said, there's dozens of people who have written little blurbs or excerpts like that, talking about how interesting and wonderful the book is, and I echo those thoughts. I want to talk about two more things about the book, then we'll talk about BAM in just a minute. One of the stories I was fascinated with was the apartment.
That's a top favorite among people. Yeah.
I'm sure. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that? And I can't imagine how shocking that must have been when they opened up the doors and the doors and the doors.
So maybe you're like this too. I think a lot of antique dealers are. You just to get into somebody's house, right? And real estate. It's kind of, I have a joke with people. We kind of call it like real estate porn, because who else would get off on this? Going, no, this house, this apartment. So okay, Chicago's Lakeshore Drive. It was a huge building boom before the crash. And many of the structures are the same architects that are on Central Park West in New York. A lot of people don't know that, but they're the same companies that built them. So these grand, opulent apartment houses that are really, I refer to them in the book, like ships. They're just like great ships. Yeah. And you really don't know, you get into these buildings, like what this apartment is going to be like. So, so the building had been sold, and it had been they had when the crash came. Let me back up. When the crash came, the building decided to offer 50-year leases, which is unheard of.
Which crash are you talking about?
Sorry, 29.
1929.
Thank you. Yeah, that's 2007. In 1929, and so there was this family that had moved in, and they signed the lease, and so there was little old lady in there who had been there for over 50 years. So in 79, then everything was the whole condo craze. And she was in these 3 little rooms in the front and the top floor, and just very, very sweet, but just kept complaining about, oh, the space, it's too much for me. And I'm going, it's not that much. It's until she started basically opening doors, whereas sadly her daughter had passed fairly young and her husband had passed. She just kept closing off sections of the apartment. And in fact, it was a full floor, 28 room apartment that went back, a third of a block, and in front of the lake, just spectacular. So it was just it was a time capsule. And she was a bit of a, pill to get out of there. She made out on it. She still made out on it. And then they of course they chopped it up and turned it into 6 apartments. So, and okay, so I've ruined the surprise ending for you a little bit, but the reveal is very touching. And, we all go through this, particularly now as people get older and they start like downsizing. That's really what that is. And when avoiding it is a problem. So, yeah,
it really is. I came to this meeting and I was an antique dealer the first time in the auction company, and people at that time in life, there's so much there to work through emotionally and physically and logistically and financially and familially, that it really, I don't know how you feel. I feel most of my job is really psychiatrist and guidance counselor more than
social worker, priest, rabbi, nursemaid, you name it. Absolutely. But you know what? Those are the good antique dealers. Those are the people that get it. Because, and if anything comes through with this interview, what I want to point out with the book is it's not about the money. This isn't a book about the money.
No, it's not.
And a lot of people go, no. You know what? And I'm not being grandiose about this, but if you can set that aside, that's my point. If you just set that aside, it's an element. Set it aside. It's such a bigger picture. And again, it's about people and their things and what's important to them and what's important to you, relationships. It's about life. It's about death. It's what's going on. And then I think the world just opens up to you. I mean, it did to me. And then the money will take care of itself. It really will. If you're a good person, an honest person, decent, fair, it'll take care of itself.
Absolutely. You talked about life and death, priests, rabbis, the whole 9 yards there. And I bring that up because in your book, you talk about a lot of stories that don't seem to fall into the preconceived notion of life or death. There's things that happen in these houses. Tell a little bit about that, the paranormal, the whatever you want to call that.
The book does have a paranormal slide to it, which was really innocent on my part. I mean, what I tried to do was write and editorially choose the best stories for this book. And then it just so happened that a number of the best stories that I found the most interesting did have kind of a paranormal bent to them. And I'm sure, as you know, a lot of dealers, everybody has stories. And I always point out, this is over 25 years of doing this. I don't turn around and the poltergeists are jumping out of a Mission Oak cupboard. No.
Right.
But every rare once in a while, there's stuff that goes on which is just inexplicable, which is part of the title of the book. I can't tell you, what it was, exactly what happened. But I interviewed enough people who, again, are just, and there's no reason to, BS me about it. And I would check things out as best I could. My favorite is with actually the Edgewater Hospital story, which has since been, as we speak, they finally converted it to it's like high-end apartments. But that's a building that has a whole crazy backstory to it, in that it was a private hospital. Hollywood stars would come here to dry out. It's close to Edgewater Beach Hotel. Frank Sinatra had a suite there. Prior to that, it had been a very elegant hotel, and then it had fallen on some bad times. It's a structure with history, and it's enormous. Jeff and I, my business partner, were in there very early as a clean out. but this is just this hundreds of thousands of square feet. So it's desks and coat racks and hat trees and chairs and oh my gosh, and a skeleton staff, excuse the expression, that was running the place, and they had all kinds of stories and would document with one another going. So I thought, I'm going to kind of weave that into our experiences there. And then it's also I won't mention what it is, but the thing that got away, which to me is the vintage fail, is on the, on the cover. The vintage fail is the thing that you didn't buy.
Yes.
So that one really touched me because I was actively involved in it. Some of the other stories were how, and again, like briefly, there's a woman who had bought a desk and didn't want to return it. I love this because she just kept going like, I'm not returning it. I'm not bringing it back. I just want to know what's going on with this desk. So, and again, who does that? What is the point of that? And she had her own experiences with this desk as we had. And trust me, when I had it, I wanted it to go. There's the drawers coming out and the little balls of light would fly out, and I had employees who wouldn't work near the desk. It's just I was at the time it seemed almost silly, but it wasn't happening to me directly. It's everyone's telling me about it. You have a business. Everything's your problem. So a haunted desk, great. It's Friday morning. I need this. So it was really more like that was how it came about. But then following up with the person who bought it, and we actually had sold it a couple times. It kept coming back till finally this woman kept it. It's a bit of a long story, but it came from her and a correspondence I had with her. It was also a different way to really tell a story. And there's a few other, but again, I just want to underscore, it's not like these things happen all the time. The book has a slant to that. I guess there's maybe 3 or 4 stories, but there's also I feel a very important story about animal rescue. This business opens you up to all kinds of situations that you've got to. Well, you need to help somebody. It's going to be good for you if you can help them.
Yeah, we all have our own person. We work with Operation Breakthrough here in town, and the Symphony and others that you like you said, being a good business owner means being aware of and taking care of those around you as best you can as well. So those are important things.
Oh, it comes back tenfold. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Tell me a story that almost made the book that is going, if there's ever a sequel, will end up in that.
There's a story. I'm not going to tell much of it because I'm probably gonna. I did talk about it once at a podcast in Australia, and it was like then the podcast in Australia we wanted to know about. I called it the Lucite Love Nest.
The Lucite Love
Nest, and it was about a couple that again, and then who are no longer there. So we're just brought into this fabulous apartment. It's kind of mid-century modern apartment, and it had all this custom lucite furniture, and they pulled down walls so they could turn a bedroom just into a jacuzzi spa, and and I go, whoa, what is this story? What is going on here? It actually turned out it was the couple was a straight woman and a gay guy, and they had a design firm. It was their apartment when they were in town, and they shared it. And the doorman had lots of really good stories for me. but the furniture everything was custom made. So I mean, there was a lucite coffee table that you pushed a button and it rose and became a dining room table. There was a lucite column that you pushed a button and it opened up and it was a bar. I mean, these people spent tens of thousands of dollars on individual pieces of furniture. So, which I sold them all for not anywhere near that kind of money. You're not gonna get it back. But there was just again, it addresses sexuality, which, like the opening story in the book, a little controversial. But again, it's life. I'm writing about what actually happened. These are people. These are real people. Who had a great eye. The apartment was spectacular. So I won't go into anymore. I probably said enough, but they're just very different stories. This is not, you're not going to hear these on Antique Roadshow.
Right. Well, and they had a great eye and the means to fulfill that eye.
Yes.
Which is yes. a trick, right? A lot of us have the eye and don't have $10,000 to spend on a custom coffee table or $50,000.
Right.
So let's change gear a little bit and talk about. We've been talking about you as the author of the Dead Poets, selling dead people's things, sponsored Dead Poets Society. Let's talk about being co-owner of Broadway Antique Market in Chicago, which is, we talked quickly before about that, how it's one of the best in the country, one of the best in Chicago.
Thank you.
Has amazing things known for mid-century, but obviously everything else as well. Tell us a little bit about that, how you ended up owning it or being a co-owner, and a little bit about the market, Broadway Antique Market.
Thanks.
Itself.
Well, our first 8 years in business, we owned the Wrigleyville Antique Mall by the ballpark. And also a good portion of the book is really about Wrigleyville. I think.
Yeah.
This goes, and which was 1990 to 1998. We were paying like $10,000 a month for these stores. It was killing us. And we knew we needed to buy something. And one of the dealers, his mom had passed, and we had to go to the wake. And so we were up on the kind of far north side coming back, and the street was blocked off or something, and so we had to come back in a different way. It's my business partner, Jeff Nelson, and I. And we go past this building, which looked like it had just fallen out of, some Art Deco Florida orgasm. And that was for sale. And it turns out it was an old furniture store, and it was built by the Pacons. But they sold it to Mr. Mann, who we would buy it from. But it was under contract to Blockbuster Video. Go on this one. And he knew they were going to buy it and tear it down. That's what they were going to do. And it would just, everybody goes to go bamchicago.com, see the building. You can't tear this building down. And so we approached this very sweet man. And he says, if you can match the price, I'll get out of that deal and I will wait. I will wait till you pull this financing together. So it probably took us about 6 months to do that. And yeah, I mean, again, when you're in this business, maybe you're going to like a vintage car, or you're going to live in a vintage building. Well, so yeah, this is 20,000 square feet on 2 floors. That opened in 1998. We brought over all the dealers we had from Wrigleyville. It was like moving the pyramids to move a antique mall into a market. We had 3 teams of movers going 24 hours a day. And then one of the movers just said, we're not doing this anymore. But that's why I did it. We hired more people than we needed, because somebody's going to say, I'm out of here. This is
right.
Yeah, that's been our home. And I will say, even now having gotten through the retail pandemic of this, the business is skewing so much younger. It's great. 5 years ago, if somebody asked me, I'd say, I don't know. I really don't know where this is going. I'll say the kids are very design savvy. We sell a tremendous amount of vinyl and like vintage fashions. Mm-hmm. And I always say, it's those things are basically the drug that gets you into this. If somebody's buying vintage, I just want vinyl. I'm not interested in anything else. Oh, hey, that's a cool lamp. It's a gate. It's the gateway drug. That's the expression I was trying to find. That kind of vintage is a gateway drug for young people. And then, okay, my gosh, with the pandemic, cookware, vintage cookware, enamelware, things that again had just laid there and nobody wanted it, changed. And we sell everything. I always say we're like a department store. So that's changed, and there's a future to this now, which I wasn't so sure about that before. And we have high-end things, but we have snapshots from a quarter. So
right.
I never want to change that. It's just as I make a reference in the book to a number of things about Marshall Field, which was a huge retailer, but they were really the same way. There was no sale that was too small. It was about keeping people happy as best they could, and when they had issues and problems, okay, we'll figure it out.
Right.
All right. Try your best to keep people happy, and that's before social media. So kind of God bless all of us. But it's changed and evolved, and it's exciting again, and it's exciting for myself and my staff, and for the dealers, and we've opened up to gangbusters, and it's not just us, because I talked to most everybody I know here in town. Anybody who'd gotten through this, nightmare, has greatly benefited from it. It gave you focus. It made you do your homework. It made you look at things in a different way and clean things up. So I'm very excited about that. And again, most everybody I talk to seems to be doing really, really well, surprisingly well.
Yeah, those I talk to, the dealers who we work with, either as buyers or sellers or both for them, the ones who are doing shows again, they're amazed. Yeah. The crowds are big, they're spending. There's a famine in the market for good, interesting things that you can't buy at a big box.
Right. Right.
And it is exciting again. It's kind of, Brimfield back 30, 40, 50, 30 years ago was really exciting. That hubbub and Round Top and all those big shows, the excitement is back right now, and I hope it continues. It'll be interesting to see what happens over the next couple of years as people get back to being able to travel more and concerts and sporting events start taking away time and money. But right now, it's been an exciting year.
But I do think I don't think it's really going to take money away from that. I think people are doing thinking twice about that great trip to IKEA for a Swedish meatball and a biscuit or whatever the hell they're selling. I have enough spatulas. That's the Simpsons joke. And I'm not knocking them, but there's just a lot of that, and you can continue with the quality of things that are being made and sold. You go back to that, can't beat it. Can't beat vintage. It's such a deal.
Well, and there's always been cheap things made, but the cheap things don't survive long enough to become vintage.
Yes, right. That's true. That's true. But at the end of the day, it's about value, and it's just a word that you just don't hear. But in vintage, there is most often value. I always say that you buy something at IKEA and 6 months later you want to sell it. Nobody wants it. You buy something in an antique store, there's a good chance that you're going to get maybe half your money back, or you might actually make some money. Set it off to an auction house. Anything can happen, right? So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a much better, sustainability. But like I said, the idea that you could find something at an antique mall that has more value than what it has, that'll never happen in any retail store.
No. And you either get it or you don't. And if you don't, that's fine. And I always go back to, there's just people have made small fortunes off of us. And I love that. I mean, we've been selling to dealers. I sold dealers yesterday. For 30 years, I've been selling to dealers. And there are other dealers, I don't want to sell to a dealer. They're going to make money. Be in the food chain, people. Just be in the food chain. Be happy with that. It never fails. You probably had the best turn on the dollar than anybody in the food chain anyway. So, if you bought it right.
Yeah.
Again, they get it or they don't, and I could explain it till my head explodes. It doesn't matter. But
what would you just on that whole idea of getting it or not and value? What would you tell people, especially young people? What should they look for? What's like one or two or three things that indicates value or quality or something that's a good piece worth buying compared to that's not a piece worth buying?
Well, it really depends on.
Let's talk about furniture.
Well, yeah, good. Okay, fine. Well, let's just go with weight. Just picking something up. Just the quality of how something's made. How are the drawers made? Pull the drawers out. How is it fabricated? and here, everybody's got a computer in their pocket, for God's sakes. We started out, we didn't have that. So you can do all kinds of research and check out and see, is that a good deal? And you can do it just standing there, for God's sakes. So to me, that's applicable for almost everything else then. So when somebody's looking at, I don't know, these Elsa Peretti earrings, is this a good value? Look them up. What do they actually sell for? Don't tell me somebody's asking for.
Yes.
Right.
The sold listings.
There's that. There's that. And they go. You're going to, quality. If you're looking at vinyl, we'll make sure the thing's not all scratched up. And we sell a tremendous amount of ephemera. I'm a paper person, so just it's just the quality. What's the condition of it? We just recently took on an estate, which a very large estate, and it was a customer of ours who had a great eye, and he would just buy the best, and he might buy something in multiples. He'd say, you know what, I think this one's just a little bit better than the last one I bought. That was him. He wanted to have one example that was as good as possible, but he had 3 which kind of got him there. That's what he enjoyed. I got more Oscar Wilde books that I will live long enough to sell, but but he had a good eye. So I think it really goes back to quality. Take pictures. Again, there's a camera in your pocket, folks. Do your homework. It could not be any more simple now than it's ever been.
Yeah, I don't know about you, but I used to carry a library in my car.
Oh, yeah.
Artist references, depression glass, pottery.
Yeah. I'd be calling up other people. Have you seen one of these? Stop calling me. But to this day, though, it's still a good reference point. And people send us things all the time that I have no intention of buying, but I always try. I try to respond and send them along their way to somebody else who might want that. But every once in a while, well, better than anybody, somebody comes along and they've got 500 duck decoys. It's like, oh, well, I guess that's what we're going to be talking about now. Something that's totally out of my realm of reference. I try to know a little bit about everything, but
But even that, when somebody shows up with something that's out of your reference, you and I can both look at that and say, that one has the potential to be something special.
Yeah.
Because there's something about the better pieces in any collection that are just different.
It kind of jumps out,
Yeah.
Don't be impulsive. That's where you make mistakes.
Right.
So just be a little more cautious, and don't be a pain when it comes to the dealer or the auction house, because their time is valuable too.
Right.
So limit it to 3 questions, and then you need to leave.
Absolutely.
But it's just being respectful of people's time. This is what we do. Because again, I reference in the book, this is the only business where everybody's wants your opinion, your free opinion on something, and you do it. But after a point, I say, my doctor's not giving out free colonoscopies anymore. He's charging for these things. So there's a reason. Or I'll even turn it around and say, well, what do you do for a living? And inevitably they say, well, I'm a dentist. Well, how about that free teeth cleaning? Not going to happen, right? So yeah, exactly. Yeah, just keep that in mind. How to talk to an antique dealer. I worked on that book, and I said, I don't know. Maybe you can't talk to us. Maybe that's the problem.
There's a lot of antique dealers, as you know, that you can't, no matter how good you are.
Absolutely, bite your head off.
Absolutely. Well, Duane, thank you so much for joining us. Let me go ahead and wrap us up here. Again, everybody else, thank you all so much for watching Behind the Gavel with Jason. We do this every week. Start up again after our move. Next week we'll have Sarah Reeder, owner of Artifactual History and Worthwhile. She's an appraiser, and she writes articles about this industry. We're going to be talking about how mentally the world has changed in this space over the last year. And of course, there's a lot to talk about in that space. If you have questions for me, my staff, my company, for Duane, you can always post them below, send us a direct message, or drop us an email at info@kcauctioncompany.com. You can always give us a call at 816-283-3633. And of course, our website, kcauctioncompany.com, will always be available 24/7 to answer your questions as best as it can. Duane, thank you so much for joining us. We have one more comment pop up here. Sue Autry, thank you so much, Sue, for watching us today and participating. love when people make comments during the show. Cerise, glad you read this book, and I think it absolutely is a second going back to it again and again and again over the years is a good thing. And I think Damien Enderly, thank you so much. I had a great time talking to Duane. Duane, thank you so much for joining me today. What's new exciting at BAM? What's coming up that people should know about?
Actually, next we're expanding our hours. We've very slowly, because we've just been weekends only since we reopened. Then we went to Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and next month we're going to start Thursdays. I mean, we used to be open 7 days a week again since the beginning of time, I think. so a little break has been okay. So so next month we'll be open on Thursdays through Sundays.
Excellent. Well, Dane, thank you so much.
Thank you. This has been fun.
And for those watching, thanks for watching. If you have any questions, let us know. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you next Friday.